7 o'clock here on this Wednesday night, and we're beginning with activity over at the State House, namely a controversial bill that would ban transgender women and girls from sports from middle school all the way to college. A Senate panel sending it to the full Senate today. Let's bring in our State House insiders for reaction. Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist, Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist. Antoine, we'll begin with you. Does this bill stand a chance of passing in the Senate?
You never can tell with the South Carolina State Senate. You know, my friend Dave would probably have a better insight because the South Carolina Senate, much like the House of Representatives, is dominated by Republican leadership. And so they ultimately decide what is decided and what's not. What I will tell you is that this bill is very reflective of a number of bills that were passed all across the country in legislatures all across the country. Earlier this year, the bill was, I think, debated in the House of Representatives, yet it was batted down and did not see the light of day. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the South Carolina Senate. There are a lot of people who want to make this a political issue, and for some, this is very personal. I think the opinions vary on both sides, whether the Democrats or Republicans, and I think it's all about your personal position on the issue.
This was a bipartisan vote, JR. There were Republicans and Democrats who voted through this bill to take it to the floor of the Senate. Is there a way for it to actually get through the Senate? Yeah, there is a pathway to get it through the Senate before the cutoff date of what's called crossover. Bills in either chamber has to be crossed over or passed into the other chamber by April the 10th. So the last legislative day is going to be next Thursday, the 7th of April. And on that particular day, we're going to see how much actually makes it through on both chambers. I think this does stand a chance because this is really simple. For folks at home, this is a very simple process. Girls playing against girls, guys playing against guys. And I think if the women's NCAA swimming tournament in Atlanta last weekend showed us anything, it shows us that there's a biological difference between men and women's sports, which we've celebrated with Title IX for the last 50 years.
Dave, I will tell you, while it may pass the Senate, that does not necessarily mean, as you know, in the legislative process, that it will pass the House of Representatives. And I don't think either one of us have true insight on that, again, because of the debate and the posture of the House of Representatives earlier this year.
Let's touch on something else now. Joe Cunningham, the former 1st District Congressman, officially to file for governor today on the Democratic ticket here, challenging Mia McLeod for the nomination. Antoine, when is this race going to start heating up on the Democrat side?
Start is an interesting word. I think it started, the temperature started rising a long time ago. I think we all anticipate these two extraordinary candidates entering the field to take on whomever the Republican nominee may be, likely the current incumbent governor, Gov McMaster. I do think it's going to be a heated discussion. I do think you're going to see ideas flow throughout this process. And I think you're going to see a battle for who we are as South Carolina Democrats come through to the eventual nominee of who our party is going to put up in November. But just like the gubernatorial filings have happened, there's been other announcements. Longtime State Representative Jerry Govan announced that he will be seeking the Democratic nomination for Superintendent of Education. And keep in mind, all of the constitutional officers, as well as every member of Congress and every member of the South Carolina House of Representatives, is up for re-election this year.
Dave, do Republicans have a preference here as to which candidate Governor McMaster will be facing in November?
I don't think the Republicans have any care right now which one of it's going to be, whether it's McLeod or Cunningham. The governor has some very, very strong polling numbers right now. We're in a very Republican state. Numbers are showing 70% approval rating or higher with Governor McMaster, especially with some of the economic growth and some of the things that we've been seeing coming from his office over the last couple of years. And I think that's a real big sign, and it's going to be a big hill that I think Democrats are going to have to try to trudge up to be able to run against him this year.
I love when my friend Dave said we live in a heavily Republican state. We're in a state that just happens to vote Republican. And truth be told, from my perspective, that means a lot of people who vote Republican vote against their own interests. When you think about the fact that for decades, Dave, you guys have controlled the governor's mansion and the General Assembly and all of our constitutional offices. But you look at South Carolina as a whole, we find ourselves last in things we should be first in and first in things we should be last in. And so, yes, Republicans have won elections in the state. That does not mean the state is Republican. It just means people have been voting against their interests for a very long time, my dear friend. And
I would disagree with you on that one, Antoine.
Maybe you should consider changing your voting decisions. Maybe we can move forward if people like you would come on board and vote on my side of the aisle.
I think when we start taking a look at the fact that we've got anywhere from a $1 to $2 billion refund and tax package that's coming down to re-benefit and money going back to taxpayers as a Republican agenda item that's probably going to happen this legislative session, I think people should be pretty happy with the fact that Republicans have been doing what their job in office, because $2 billion back to the taxpayers of South Carolina is a pretty big deal.
Dave, you know what people should be happy about? The fact that it was this state in the Democratic primary who launched Joe Biden's presidency, nomination to the presidency, and because people all around the country voted, Democrats and Republicans, for Biden and Harris. And as a result, places like South Carolina have a buffet of items to choose from because of all the federal dollars that flowed to the state that have never come before. So that means the General Assembly can pass laws and use this Republican right-wing language like money back to the taxpayers. Why? Because the budgets are overflowing the state thanks to Democrats and the help they provided to states like South Carolina and other southern states.
So unlike my counterpart over here, Antoine and I are really good friends. I will give credit where credit is due on that one, Antoine. And it's the power of your mentor, James Clyburn, in doing what he did to make that possible. And so I think this is a place where JR and Antoine, we both have to look at this, and we all have to look at this. And folks at home, you have to ask yourself this question. Do you like where you are right now? Are things improving where you are? That will be the question that will be the gubernatorial election in 2022.
We're going to have to end the conversation there, guys. Thank you so very much for your time. As always, for more on what's going on over at the State House, you can go to our website, WLTX.com, or the News 19 app.